All right. Let's give everyone a chance to get into the stream. It's good to be back and, serving this community and testing again. It's always fun, especially after taking a bit of a break. Actually, it's always a little tough to get into the swing of things after stepping away for a week. So hopefully you've all had a chance to take a little bit of a break as well. So where did we go? We went to the Caribbean for a few days, so that was fun. Nice to get a little bit of sun. I always get allergies at this time of year where I live. I live in the Northeast in the US, and the pollen always gets to me. So it was nice to get away from that, but as soon as you get back, it just hits you. So not so fun. Hey, I'll just give everyone a few moments, and then we're going to jump straight into the drawing, the giveaway. I think that'll be fun. I've run the numbers. I've got the spreadsheet together of all the people that entered. So you've got a pretty good chance if you entered to win. I've got let me pull up the random number generator. Let's see. All right, I've got the random number generator. So it's you've got a 1 in 63 chance of winning. However, some people, based on their membership level, have like more than one entry. So that's a pretty good chance. Let's see. Yeah, no problem. High Caliber. I appreciate you dropping by. I will do the drawing very shortly here. Let's see. And you'll be able to catch it later anyway. But yeah, so if you ever need to do this, very simple tool. You put in your minimum number, your maximum number, and you click on generate, and that'll decide the winner. Now, I obviously have this. I don't want to put everyone's private information up. So I have these numbers, 1 to 63, keyed to the people that entered. And so I can simply just select a number here when I hit generate, and then identify the winner, which I'll announce. Well, let's do that now. And we've given everyone a few minutes to join. Let's see. It'd be good if I actually had a drum roll or something like that. Let's see. It doesn't come with sound effects. All right, I've got another screen next to me. You can see it here. So on the count of 3, good luck, everyone. All right, 1, 2, 3. That is all right. Number 1. I mean, how I got to run this a few times. So it is number 1. That's whoever's number 1 in the list is gonna win. But just to prove that this isn't messed up, I'll click it again just to show you. Right. So everyone, number 1. Let's see. There you go. 50, 25, 58, 15, 12, 47, 25, 47. And by the way, so number one, congratulations to number 1. I'm going to look them up in a moment. It's not, I created the spreadsheet at the end, this morning after everyone entered. And so it's not based on, hey, if you entered earliest, you were number 1. So I randomized putting in the information, just so you know. And I didn't alphabetize. I completely just put in the information as I was pulling the things out of the email. So let me see who won. All right. Give me 1 minute. I'll click on this. So the winner is Ben Fletcher. Interestingly, he's in Australia, so that's going to be an interesting shipping cost estimate there. So congratulations to Ben. He won the prize. So very cool. This is the prize, right? So this is the graphics card here. That's the PowerColor RX 9070 XD. Congratulations. So congratulations to Ben. I'll reach out to you via email and we'll sort out shipping and other things. So congratulations. One thing I did want to point out, though, for those of you that, let me just take this down since it's not that interesting to look at. For those of you that didn't win, my next video, which is coming out next Friday, will announce a new competition, and it's another GPU, and it's a very, very cool prize, and we'll get to it today. And you'll see, but it may or may not be this, right? Which is what will be in the next video. So I've tested this and used it for a couple of videos. And I have another 5070, actually the one behind me here, the Vanguard, which is here. I don't need two. I'm done with testing this. Turns out, interestingly, that, and I'll show you in a moment, the Ventus, which is the lower model, the Vanguard is the highest end model. The Ventus has a better quality chip. So that proves that MSI and Asus and others do not bin their chips based on the variant that they're selling. And I'll show you the data in a moment that lets you see that. So if you didn't win, don't worry. What I can do is just keep the list as is, so you'll be automatically entered in unless you send me an email and say you don't want to be entered in, which I don't know why you wouldn't. And by the way, for Ben, who won the 9070 XT, you'll be excluded. I think that's fair from this prize drawing, because I don't think it's. I'd like more people in the community to have access to these cards. So getting two I don't think that would be reasonable or fair. So yeah, that was pretty cool. I think this is a fun thing to do, and wherever I can, particularly as I get free or demo unit sent to me, I should be able to do this more often. I'll just catch up on the chat here. Let's see. Thought I'd join. Yeah, there's a statement about in North Carolina, the pollen's terrible. It works its way up the coast. And so when I used to travel a lot for work, I used to notice that I'd go down to DC, the pollen would be horrific. I'd come back up into New York area and it wouldn't be as bad. And then it gradually moves its way up. So yeah, and I usually, if I have to, drink water and things more during this event or live stream, I'm on Claritin, and it usually dries you out a little. So just be aware of that. But yeah, it's not fun. I get it every year. I actually got it in Australia when I used to live there as well. So this has followed me around. Yeah, you're welcome on these. Brent made a comment about the AMD overclock video. Glad that's helpful. I'm going to be doing, much more. I'm actually working on a larger effort, which is like an educational program around what's your objectives with building a PC or even buying a PC. How to select the components, how to build, how to optimize, how to upgrade. So I'm working on that. That's going to take me a little while. So, but as I'm making the videos for the channel, they will go into the program, the course, right? So I'm starting to think through I know how to lay it out, but I'm thinking through what would make good content that would also be educational and other things. And that's part of the It's Not Rocket Science series. I'm sure if you're here and you're familiar with the program, that's what it's going to be part of. So stay tuned for that. That's coming. It's going to be fun. I see a lot of comments around, not knowing where to start. And honestly, one of the things that I think is the most challenging is how to select components. And I see a lot of mistakes made there. Or even just what's your objective? If it's pure gaming, you select different components than if it's, a combo, right? You want to do professional work and gaming, or if you just want to do professional work, the components will change a little. So, and you don't, and I think that's important to understand so you don't overspend. I think that's a big one there. And let's see, a bunch of congratulations for Ben, so good luck. There was a question from Sublime, what happens if Ben doesn't want it? That's a very good question. I'll reach out to him. If for some reason, since he's in Australia, if for some reason the shipping costs are exorbitant and he decides not to do it, I will redraw. That's just, I'll go back, remove him from the list and do another drawing. And so I will let you know in the comments. He should get back to me pretty rapidly, but in a community post this week, I'll let you know what the status is there. And then hopefully, assuming that he does want it, when he receives it, may take a couple of weeks, we can get some footage or video or something if he's comfortable, just showing it and then, putting it in his system, something like that. That'd be really cool for the community. So I'll try and encourage him to do that. Obviously, I can't force someone to do that and they may not want to go on camera, but if he does, or even if he just wants to take a photo of his machine with the card in it, that would be cool too. So we'll do that. I think that'll be fun. Let's see. Vacation was good. I mentioned that at the start. It's always nice to get away. One of the problems I always have is when you get back from vacation, just the motivation and spooling up again. So it's been a little slow this week. But I'd already started the video that I'm going to release next week before I went away. So I really just have to finish it up. I've got to film that tomorrow. All the data is done. I'm going to show some of the data takes. I think it's actually a really interesting discussion. But yeah, so that's done. And then I did, you're all probably very familiar with this. While I was away, I did a post on what the next video will be. So the next one I'm going to be starting working on probably Monday is showing the Astral 5080. It's actually behind me, beneath, let's see, I always mess this up. Beneath, that's the Astral there actually, beneath the Vanguard. I'll do an unboxing as well because I think it's got some cool stuff in it. I haven't unboxed it yet. So I'll show the Astral 5080 against the Sapphire 9070 XT and Sapphire 7900 XTX. So that should be interesting. I'll show them, of course, on stock settings and overclocked. I do have to update the V-BIOS on this one, and that comes from the noise that DeBauer found when he was running that top fan. So I'll do that. That should be interesting. But that's what's coming. Let's see. So I got a question here. I wanted to ask you, do you need a good silicon library to run 6400 mega transfers per second with 64 gigabytes on a 9070? Oh man, I'm just, it's the 9070 versus I can't even say it, 9700. That's 9700. There you go. 9700X versus 9070. So 9700X, like the video you did comparing to the 7800X 3D. So the answer is yes, but there's a little bit of an asterisk. You need a good memory controller. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that your CPU can overclock extremely well. I've had CPUs where the memory controller was excellent, but the CPU itself was very inefficient, needed a lot of voltage, particularly on the Intel side when I used to play around with some of the higher RAMs for Raptor Lake, for higher RAM kits for Raptor Lake. So you need a good memory controller, and your motherboard, the trace length, all of that impacts what you will be able to get stable in one-to-one mode. So that's 6400. I'm very curious, and I'm talking with Asus about this, of testing their new X870E 2-DIMM motherboard, right? So they've had it on the Intel side for a while, and I'm very interested to test that to see if that makes it easier to get the memory stable. So that's at the Apex board, and that's coming out very soon. So what I'll do is I'll do a video where I compare the Apex to the Hero, which has 4 DIMMs. Theoretically, the Apex should be able to get the 2-DIMM, the memory kit stable at higher speeds. So they both impact. And unfortunately, I mean, other than buying the motherboard, there's not much you can do about the chip, right? You get what you get. That being said, I wouldn't stress too much about missing out on a few FPS. It's not a huge amount, right? It's not enough to try and to be upset if you don't win the lottery, right? That's really what it comes down to for me. Okay, let's see. JGGG, not sure if you did already, but doing a comparison of 6400 CL30 versus 6000 CL26 versus 8000 on a 9800 X3D would be interesting. Yes, so the CL26 kits that I use now, they only came out recently. I'm going to do a follow-up to my memory video, my AM5 memory video. It's kind of a part 2 where I'm going to look at dual rank. I'll retest different variations, but look at, 32 versus 64, 4 versus 2 DIMMs. I'm going to kind of expand it a little bit more. That video did really well, and people seem to like it. So I'll do a part 2, I guess, of that video. So that's on my ever increasing to-do list of videos to make. Sublime asked, do I recommend overclocking, undervolting AM5 CPUs? Absolutely. And watch the video I did on doing that. There's multiple, this is something I got into some of the comments about this week. There's multiple ways to undervolt and overclock CPUs. The reason I use the PBO2 approach is that those algorithms were developed by AMD. They're dynamic, and they minimize the risk of doing any of this. So that's why I use that approach. The results are fantastic. So for example, if you go in and set your voltages, there is a chance, if you screw up, that you could increase the voltage too much and supply too much voltage to the CPU and damage it. That's not going to happen with PBO2, right? Unless AMD screws up the algorithm, but that's on them, right? That's not on us. And it will also, the reason it's a curve offset and not just a direct undervolt, is because the whole curve shifts. And that's why I like that approach. It's very stable once you get it stable, and you can watch my undervolting guide for that too. But I highly recommend it. It's free performance. You're not decreasing the life of your component. In fact, when you undervolt, you're reducing the temps. So that should theoretically increase the life of your component. And then some people like to just stop there, which is fine. I tend to like to use that headroom to increase my performance. When I'm using a component, I like to get the max performance I can out of it. GPU, CPU, memory, why not? You spend the money to get it. Why not extract the max out of it? That said, I understand some people just want to plug and play. That's fine too. And again, that's why I want to build this course out, because the approach you take, depending on what your willingness to do things is, may change. The other thing is, I also want to, one of my biggest reasons for making this channel is to eliminate the fear of upgrading, eliminate the fear of building, eliminate the fear of overclocking, undervolting. The number of comments I get where someone says, why would you do that? You can screw up your system. The world's going to end. It's just, the chances of screwing up your system when you know how to do something is very, 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 very low. You could screw up your system doing a BIOS update because the power goes out in the middle of the BIOS update, right? Sure, that can happen. You can brick your system. But you can screw up your system just messing around with it, and in Windows and getting corrupt files and then not having it boot. And there's lots of ways to screw up a system. But just this fear, and the reason I can relate to it is I had that fear when one of my first videos on the channel, I talked about the fear I had in upgrading a CPU. I mean, I was nervous as hell. I was sweating. I was sweating so much, I actually had to get a towel, and because I was worried about the sweat dropping into the CPU socket when I was inserting the CPU. And by the way, there's a long time ago, back in the days of, I had an AMD FX 57 or something like that, single core CPU, and I was trying to upgrade it, and I was so scared that I was going to screw up the system. And now over time, I've realized just how not ridiculous, it's okay to be scared, but how when you just learn a few things, you can remove all of that fear. It is like Lego, and that's why I say it. It's expensive Lego, but then again, there's some Lego kits that are pretty expensive. So anyway, fun stuff. Let's see. Yeah, someone said looking forward to the Apex versus the Hero. I was also trying to convince Asus to send me out the what was their Extreme board as well, and try and get that in the mix. We'll see. I don't think that's really necessary because that's just overkill in every dimension, but we'll see. Let's see. So I have a question here. Do you offer services to overclock CPU, RAM, and GPU? So if you go to my website, I do, but I don't do it often. And the reason is simple. If I'm going to do that and do it properly, I don't know exactly how long it'll take, because you could have a high quality chip that's really easy and I can do it in 5 seconds. Or you could have a low quality chip which requires additional tweaking. And so if I set an hourly rate of what I would set when I do like consulting and other things, it's high. And so, you know, there's this trade-off of I don't want to enter into an agreement with someone and have them feel like they didn't get the value, but at the same time, if it takes me a full day, that's a lot of energy and effort that I have to put in. So I'm on the fence about whether to, and I also don't think that's scalable. You can only do so many before you burn out. So that's where I think building the education program and teaching people how to do it. You know, it's like, it's the fishing analogy, right? You can give someone a fish or you can teach them how to fish. It's much more scalable if I teach people how to fish. And that's really what I'm focused on, but I'm open to it. I just haven't done a lot of it, since I started the channel, but I'm open to it. So just keep that in mind. Just reach out to me if you're interested through the website. It'll just take you, if you're a member, you have access to my email anyway, but it'll reach out to me via email, and we can talk about it. So definitely happy to discuss. Oh, by the way, one very cool thing I'm going to be doing soon is I met the CEO of Paradox Customs. If you've looked at buying pre-builts before, they may have come up. Like they just built a machine for Kevin Durant. So they do some high profile clients. They're based out in Long Island, New York, which is not too far away from where I live. It's a decent drive. So we're going to be doing a collaboration in the near future, which is going to be fun. I'm going to head out there. We're going to go through some things. I'm going to take one of their systems and do some optimization based on some of the guides that you've seen on the channel and see how much extra performance I can extract out of one of their systems, which I think will be a lot of fun. So, that'll be pretty cool. That's coming up. I also am in discussions with others as well. Based on a couple of the comments I had on the channel, I reached out to DeBauer as well. So that would be a very cool collaboration because I have a lot of respect for him and what he does, and even being able to work on designing some components together, I think would be very cool, and it tap into my background, his background. So that'd be really cool. So stay tuned for that. Lots of cool things to do. Let's see. I'll answer a couple more questions, then I'm going to jump into, and I got to be aware of time. I tend to just completely lose track of time, which I'm sure you saw from the last live stream, which was 2 hours. I mean, that was an overclocking class, so that's understandable, I guess. But I do want to dig in a little bit on some of the things I discovered recently. I think that will be interesting for everyone. Master Chief said, yeah, I'm scared because I don't know how to build or what components to pick. I think that's one of the biggest issues, right? And then Micro Center is good because they allow you to go pick components and then build it for you. I used to buy pre-built simply because it was a time thing, right? I didn't allocate time to build, and then I was worried about, well, what happens if I build it? And then I got to get the software, and then I got to do the optimization, and there's a lot of learning, and it's like scattered all over the place on YouTube. By the way, that's why I want to put my course together, because it is all over the place. And even just on my channel, I find a lot of people will ask me questions on a video, and then I end up just pointing them towards another video. And it's just hard to navigate sometimes, right? And that's why I try and bucket my how-to guides under It's Not Rocket Science series, my head-to-head guides under UPCFC, the Ultimate PC Fighting Championship Series. And then the ones where I look at more than one component, like 3 CPUs or 4 GPUs or whatever, or try to answer some kind of value question specifically, as in my "Is it worth it" series. But lately they've been when I compare more than two components, because 2 components, I do 3 resolutions. When I'm comparing a lot of components, I tend to focus on a resolution just to show the relative performance. So for CPUs, it would be low resolution, low settings. For GPUs, high resolution, high graphic settings. So that's how I structure my series, and the live streams are the Blackbird Chronicles. All right. Okay, I'm going to jump into I'm going to jump into I saw a funny comment. I'm going to jump into some of the content that I wanted to discuss today, and then we'll come back to questions and answers. So I think that's this one. All right. I wanted to talk about Nvidia drivers, and I posted this on March 11th, and I posted another comment this week. When I was testing the 5080, I discovered this. When I was testing the 5090 versus the 4090, I ran across some pretty big issues, and things like the voltage slider in any of the overclocking apps like GPU Tweak 3 or MSI Afterburner was not working. In fact, when you increase voltage, you decrease performance, and then you'd get crashes and other things. And one of the biggest problems I came across was the boost clock table resetting to lower performance. So the way this would manifest is that you would test a component, overclock it. You would overclock too much, crash the card, and the crash could just be an app crash, like Steel Nomad doesn't run. So there's no actual crash. You just close Steel Nomad, whatever. Run the card again without the overclock, and the performance is like 1,000 points lower than when you first ran it with the default settings, which is insane. And so even with just a reboot, that wouldn't reset. And so and by the way, this is not just me. This was, let's see. This was a comment that I found I think this is in the Guru 3D comments as well, that overvoltage isn't working. There was no discussion here about the overclock and what happens if an app crashes. But what's fascinating is even if you're not overclocking and an app crashed, it seemed to reset the performance to a lower number, which is really odd, really strange behavior. Very, very annoying when you're trying to overclock a card, because every time you need to find the edge when you overclock a card. You saw that in the masterclass, and you can't do that reliably if your numbers keep moving around all over the place. I reached out to Nvidia, you can see that here, to ask them, like, what the hell's going on. They said try without voltage tuning, which is okay, but that's not a good answer, right? When you're trying to get the max out of your card. And this is what happened. This is let me just zoom in here. This is the performance comparison when I tested the 5090 FE edition versus the 4090 FE edition. And the max overclock is without voltage tuning. And that's why you see this increase in performance that's pretty minimal, right? 4 to 6%, so around 5% is not great. Compare that to the 4090 with the same drivers, by the way. We'll get to drivers in a minute, where you're getting upwards of 8%, 8 to 10%. This is pretty small, and it's obviously being limited by voltage, right? That's an issue. So they did fix this. So I'm looking forward to retesting and seeing what you can get out of it. But this was very strange because on the 5080, I had a huge amount of headroom. Now, the 5090 is power limited too, so that's a challenge. But because it's so close to that 600 watt limit through one 12 volt high power cable. But this was really disappointing when I did it. So that's back in February when I was testing these in February, late February, and that's why I made that post in early March, right? Let's see. Okay. So the question comes up, right? What do you do about it? And I wanted to share this because I like to give solutions, not just complain. So at the time, rebooting didn't always work. It worked occasionally. And then I came across this command, which is a command that you should put into your toolkit. And I need to test this to see if it works with AMD too, if I replace Nvidia with AMD. I'm not 100% sure. So I know this works with Nvidia GPUs, and it's not restricted to the 50 series. But when I was having that clock reset, that boost clock reset, this command seemed to help. So it's Nvidia -SMI space -- by the way, open up a command prompt as an administrator, then type in this command, reset GPU clocks, and then it'll say all done, and then reboot. That didn't always work as well, which was frustrating as hell. By the way, I discovered this on, I forget what it was called. Let's see. On Igor's Lab. Igor's Lab actually posted this. That's a very good site, by the way, just to find information. I like the way he tests. So this didn't always work. The only thing that always 100% worked was not great, which was shutting down your computer and disconnecting power to the card and letting the power drain out of the card, like disconnecting the 12-volt high power cable, which, you don't want to keep unplugging and plugging that thing in, right? We've seen about that. We've seen issues with that. And completely removing power, and then, so basically unplug it for 30 seconds, whatever, until, press the power on button and you shouldn't see any lights appear, and then plug it all back in, reset, and all of a sudden, magic, your performance is back. So that was not cool. I provided that information to Nvidia, and they came out with a driver update, and that didn't fix things. And then they came out with a hotfix update, and I still had problems when I was overclocking the 5070 Ti recently. And then they finally recently, like last week or this week, whatever, last week, Saturday. So last week, released a new driver, and then within a day released a hotfix for that driver. I'll tell you, I have never seen, in the entire time that I've been using PCs, which is a long time, I've never seen Nvidia drop the ball on drivers the way they did with the launch of the 50 series. And they finally appear to be at a good driver. But, all of the online crap that AMD gets about drivers, and I've had nothing but stable experience with their drivers, with their latest cards. So, wow, the tables have turned there, right? Nvidia has done a lot of things this launch that have hurt their reputation, I would say, or credibility. They make great products. I mean, I don't think anyone can argue that they don't make good products. What you can argue about is price. You can argue about value. And now I would argue about commitment to delivering stable drivers on day one. I don't recall the last time I've had this many issues. And it's shocking to me because I haven't. I was unexpected, and having to spend time, overclocking takes 5 times as long, because I'll be doing something and then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, that's not a good overclock. And then I'll realize that it reset the damn GPU boost clocks and it actually is a good overclock. But anyway, it was quite strange. Let's put it that way. So the good news is that the drivers appear to have been fixed. Which is interesting. Let me show you. I want to show you kind of what that looks like. So this was, all right. So this was from my recent 9070 XT versus 5070 Ti video. This was with the earlier driver, one of the earlier drivers, not the one from last week. And the card, the 5070 versus 9070 XT, was an interesting battle. I did get a lot of pushback that let's see, I'll show you here. I got a lot of pushback on this because people were concerned that my data didn't line up with some of the larger tech channels. And by the way, I'm not going to go into that in detail. I went into that in some of the posts. But the reason it didn't line up was because they were using a much earlier driver that had issues, but they never overclocked, so they never saw a lot of the issues, or they weren't aware of them. But these numbers, particularly on the average FPS, were lower for the 5070 Ti relative to the 9070 XT than what people expected. And I can confirm now with the new drivers that you do get a boost, and I'll show you that in a moment. These results are correct. And you'll see in the corner here, I don't even know if you can, you can see here in the corner. You'll see in the corner here that I always put the information about the test, right? The CPU, motherboard, RAM. In fact, I'll zoom in so you can see this. So on all of my benchmark charts, it's not super readable here because it's an image of the original chart. But I always put the CPU, motherboard, RAM, the AMD driver, the fact that Smart Access Memory was enabled, Nvidia driver, resizable bar enabled, and the Windows 11 version. So that means you can replicate these results if you use these drivers, right? So this is driver 572.83 for Nvidia. And so these results are accurate, as I stated multiple times, based on that driver version, right? So what's interesting is I went back this week and I wanted to take a look at what the impact would be with the latest drivers. Apart from the overclocking stability and other things, yeah, I worked through that. It wasn't fun, but I was able to work through it and get some numbers in. But this is what happened. This is, I found this very, very interesting. Well, so one thing here, and I'll get to in a moment. I tested the Vanguard. So I did switch GPUs here, but it's completely irrelevant to this discussion because all I wanted to do was show you the performance difference between the old driver that I used to test in that video and the new driver that came out this week. So looking at 3D Mark GPU benchmarks again. And as you're aware, Steel Nomad is a very good representation of what to expect out of modern games. The top part of the table here is the stock settings, right? So no overclock. Old driver to new driver. You can see that there was a decent uptick. And I put this in a community post, by the way. So if you want to get access to this chart, you can look at the community posts. So you can see that, I mean, in Steel Nomad, it was 10%. Speedway, 3.5%. Port Royal, 6.5%. An increase in power. A slight increase in temperature in some aspects. Not a big deal, not meaningful. But an increase in power. So it looks like that Nvidia went back and re-optimized the driver to extract more performance. If you now put those percentages on the 5070 Ti performance from my prior video, that will show you what that performance would be roughly with the new driver. What's fascinating to me, and this is where it's interesting. Clearly, Nvidia did some work on the default settings of the card. And so my guess is that they tweaked it to really tap into some of the overclock potential on the cards, like the 5070 Ti, 5070. They had massive overclocking potential. So when you look at the Vanguard with the old driver fully overclocked, so this is now max overclock on both cards, exactly the same overclock, by the way. I did not vary the overclock between drivers. In fact, I retested the overclock I used with the old drivers for the new drivers, and it was exactly the same overclock, meaning that I got instability issues at exactly the same place, right? So if you now compare them, Speedway went down slightly. Port Royal basically didn't change. So Speedway and Port Royal did not change, but I did get a boost in Steel Nomad, which is interesting. I did get a slight increase in power here, which is also interesting. So in Steel Nomad, it went because of this. See how in Speedway and Port Royal, the powers were basically identical between the old driver and the new driver. And it's below the 350 watt maximum power draw for this card. That means it's voltage limited, right? It's either going to be voltage limited or power limited. It's voltage limited. That's why you're not seeing any increase in power here. What's fascinating to me is in Steel Nomad, it is clearly with an increase of around 10 watts, it was power limited here. And the new driver allowed it to move back onto being, well, it's 347, so it's probably pretty balanced on being voltage limited again, voltage power limited. But that's why you got a little bit of a boost here. It's fascinating to me that you really didn't get much of a boost in some of these other applications. So I did test this in a few games. And by the way, a lot of this information is going to be in the video for next week. So I just wanted to give the live stream audience, this team, a bit of a heads up, because I think it's fascinating to go through this. And by the way, I'll stop before I go to the next topic and go through some questions and see what you think. But I did want to look at the impact that this has on performance. So I'm just looking at one game here, which is Call of Duty Black Ops 6. And this is the, let's see, what am I looking at? This is the old driver for the 5070 Ti. And if you're looking at just max overclock, remember the max overclock didn't really change much. So I did retest, by the way, the 9070 XT with the latest AMD drivers. Didn't really change performance at all, not in any meaningful way. So that's good. Stability of drivers is a good thing, by the way. I think the new driver supported some new games that came out like Oblivion and others. One thing to be aware of is this 47.5 FPS 1% low for the max overclock for the Ventus 3X, and then the 95.1. So now if you compare that to the updated chart, so now what this is showing is the Ventus 3X with max overclock with the latest driver. That 47, which was very close to the 9070 XT, has now become 54.9. So that's a significant increase in 1% lows. The average FPS did not change. So the 9070 XT with max overclock compared to the 5070 Ti with max overclock is still provides better performance in Call of Duty Black Ops 6 in average performance. Its 1% lows are a little lower now than the 5070 Ti with this new driver. It's fascinating. And also, and I'll get into this in a moment, the Ventus 3X overclock, which people, by the way, complained to me in the comments, why did you test a lower end Nvidia GPU versus a higher end AMD GPU? You're tainting the results. It's unfair. The reality was, I have a hard time getting access to GPUs too. That was all I could get. And I had to buy that in a bundle from Newegg with a monitor, which I didn't really want. So, that's why. It's not because I'm trying to do one thing or the other. Now that we've had some time being able to get my hands on a higher end model, I just want to show you something. It doesn't matter. It's a little better in 1% lows. It's literally identical in the average FPS in Call of Duty Black Ops 6. So yeah, it didn't change any of the outcomes. But if you want to see that and dig in a little bit further, I also decided to run the two cards against each other. So the Ventus 3X overclock, which by the way may or may not be the new giveaway, against the Vanguard SoC, a much more expensive card, like 25% more expensive, in stock and overclock settings. So yes, in stock settings, because it has a much higher factory overclock on the Boost GPU, like on the order of 100, I think it's 160, something like that, versus 30 for the Ventus 3X overclock. You do get a noticeable benefit. It's a 5 to 7% benefit. So say around 6% in performance. That's meaningful. That is great, right? It's drawing a little more power, right? But which is what you expect. But the big advantage, in my opinion, is the fact that the temperatures, particularly on the memory, are significantly lower. So Cool. You know, you're paying 25% more and you're getting something for that, right? However, if you follow my overclocking guide, which by the way, the video next week will be an Nvidia focused overclocking guide, you get identical performance out of both cards, right? It's, if you compare the max overclock for the Ventus 3 or my Ventus 3X overclock versus my Vanguard SoC, remember, silicon dependent, you get nearly identical performance. This is not meaningful. 1.9%, anything under 3%, not really meaningful. 0.7% and 1.5%. Now, remember, it's drawing a lot more power, 30 to even, 40 watts more power. It is staying cooler. It's a much bigger card and has, so therefore, more effective cooling. But you're not, if you learn, the reason I want to teach people how to extract max performance, how to overclock, is if you learn how to do this, you can spend 25% less money and get identical performance out of the card, right? My recommendation is learn how to spend the time to learn how to do that and save money. That's kind of my conclusion from this. But I also wanted to do it because, like when people say, hey, you tainted the results because you used a lower end model. Now, I would have tried to buy a higher end model if I could, but I also, I want to make sure that I didn't do something wrong there. I just want to show you that because I show stock and overclock performance, the conclusion doesn't really change, right? But if you are comparing, hey, should I buy a higher end variant or stick with kind of more the base model? I mean, I would just learn how to overclock, spend I don't know what it takes, an hour or so overclocking your card, follow the steps. And, and even if you look at the temperatures on this card, on the Ventus 3X, 67 and 80 degrees is nothing close to being concerning, right? Memory at below, if you look at the AMD cards, they're 9070 XT, 9070, they're operating at a much higher memory temperature, which is interesting. So yeah, I mean, this was an interesting test, right? So two things. Nvidia seems to have finally gotten their act together on drivers. And by the way, I didn't even discuss the issues with prior generation Nvidia cards with the new drivers. Companies were telling people, if you have a 40 series card or a 30 series card, roll back your driver. When was the last time you heard someone say that about Nvidia? So I didn't even discuss that, but yes, that's an issue too. So, all right, before I move on, let me leave this up on screen and let me tackle some of the questions. Let's see. Igor said better to go with the 9700X than the 7700X. I would agree. In one of my videos, I tested both 9700X asterisk, right? 9700X with a much higher power limit, right? They artificially limited the performance of the 9700X when they set such a low power limit. The 7700X had a much higher power limit. So as long as you do that, that's fine, right? Let's see. I appreciate that, Michael, about being best tech channel on YouTube. That would be awesome. I'm trying to get there and just focus in on the content and provide value. That's what I'm trying to do. So I appreciate that feedback. Yeah, and I do. There's a comment about Nvidia has their B team working on the video card drivers with the A team switching across to AI. It's interesting when you look at the actual profit or revenue that they generate from AI versus gaming. It's 90% to, so it's 9 to 1, right? 90% to 10% for gaming. If you're a business, you can't blame someone for wanting to spend more time in a sector that is generating so much more revenue and profit. You can't. As disappointing as that is to say, I mean, you can't blame Nvidia for doing that. They're a publicly traded company. They're trying to deliver value to the shareholders. It certainly does appear that they were not as focused on this launch as they had been on previous launches. I think that's a very fair and unbiased statement based on the issues that you've seen. You know, missing ROPs and black screens and you know, power cable related issues. Again, I mean, did they not learn their lesson from the 40 series? Lots of channels have covered this. My concern, there's only so much you can do about hardware, right? Like, yes, if you have a card with missing ROPs, you return it and you get a card back that doesn't, right? So, okay, mistakes happen. I get it. But drivers is one that I have a problem with because I test so much, and just discovering the issues wastes my time. And then trying to overclock the cards and have it be much more time consuming than it should be. I mean, I should be able to sit down and overclock one of these cards in no more than an hour, right? Yeah, I got it. I have experience doing it. But I mean, that's about the time. When you've got these issues, it takes me like 6 hours because you get sidetracked on trying to solve other problems. And then, you know, you go down rabbit holes of trying to find solutions. It's just not fun. And so, yeah, it certainly does feel that way. Yeah, I think Nvidia damaged their reputation with this launch. And that's something they're going to have to work hard to get back, right? Let's see. I have a question from Igor. Can you test where 9079, I keep screwing this up. I've been testing so many GPUs. I'm so used to saying 9070. 9700X and 9800X3D, the cutoff border is regarding the GPU in 1440p. So I assume that means you'd like to know where the value of spending more money on the 9800X3D kicks in. You know, I showed, so yeah, I mean, that would just require a 9700 X versus 9800 X3D, 9700X versus 9800 X3D video, which is on my list of things to do. So yeah, I mean, I could definitely do that, right? Yeah, and I think, Michael, your point, I made this comment in the community post. If there's a lot of channels, if their numbers don't match, are afraid to post their numbers. I actually, when I noticed that I had some differences in my numbers, I spent an extra week testing and checking and verifying. So that's why I was confident that they were correct. And so you've seen that with the 9700. I'm not going to get this right today. 9,000. I'm going to say 9700X video. You saw that I was unafraid to publish results, and now all of the tech channels are saying how great a CPU that is. I think it's important to back yourself, particularly when your testing approaches and techniques are robust, and generate the discussion. Why are the results different? Now, that doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. I do. And in one of my earlier videos, I had to repost the benchmarks because I had made a mistake. And the mistake was the AIO, which actually came from Falcon Northwest, broke during testing. And I did not notice. It wasn't shutting down, but it was dropping the performance of the CPU. And so I remember that to this day, because the last thing you want to happen when you post a video is to learn that your data is complete garbage, right? And by the way, if that ever happened, and so I went back and tested, it turned out that it impacted 2 benchmarks. So I just posted that as a comment. The last thing you want to do as a content creator is post a video, get all these comments and likes and other things on the video, and then have to take it down. That's not cool. So I try to avoid that as much as possible. And that's why I do try and check and make sure that the data is accurate. But again, particularly when people write comments and point things out, I do read all the comments. I do try to respond to all the comments as much as possible. And obviously, as the channel grows, I'm not going to be able to continue to do that en masse, but I'm going to do that for as long as I can. And then when I see people point out issues, I always go away, even if I think they're wrong, and check, right, and make sure. That's why I did retested these, because I'm curious, right? Anyway, okay, let's see. Yeah, Michael made the comment about the chips being the same. I would say that, and I verified this with Asus and MSI, that they do not bin their chips for GPUs. So if they've got a $2,000 GPU or a $1,000 GPU, that's the same series, right? So let's say 5800, right? If they, or a 5080, I'm sorry, now I'm doing the reverse. So if they have a 5080 and they have a $1,000 5080 or a $2,000 5080, they get the lottery just like every other card. So you could get very lucky. And by the way, I may have gotten lucky here, and my Ventus 3X overclock is not representative of every other Ventus 3X overclock out there. Absolutely. A sample size of one does not determine the truth. I just want to be very clear. And I could have gotten very unlucky with my Vanguard SoC. So just be clear on that. I could have, and so just keep that in mind. But based on this data, that's the conclusion I draw, that if you max overclock both cards, you're going to get very similar performance. I would expect that to be reasonably true, and the only way I wouldn't expect that to be true is if there was a massive difference between silicon quality. And I don't see that, even based on the temperatures and other things that I'm seeing in stock conditions. So, but this could be a very unique one-off case, right? Let's see. Oh, that's very cool. I'm gonna mess up your name, and I'm very sorry about that. But Wujka, I hope I got that right. Said, based on your reviews and testing, I bought the 9070 XT and 9700X after sitting for years on AM4. So that's awesome. I think that's a very cool combination. In fact, I think that's I'll say it this way. I think that's a great setup for 4K gaming and like higher end gaming. Obviously, I wish the availability of the 9070 XT was better and that the prices were lower. I think that's being driven by demand at the moment. There's so much demand for these GPUs. For example, I'm trying to get my hands on a 9070 because one of the things I want to try out is flashing the V-BIOS to see if I can get more performance. Very curious about doing that. And it's tough to get your hands on, or at least on the one I want, because I want to make sure that I got a V-BIOS to upgrade it to. So I'm gonna reach out to Asus, see if they can send me one. But it is tough out there. It's still tough. I think availability is getting better. I see more availability each week, but the prices still aren't great, right? And obviously that's got something to do with tariffs. By the way, one thing on tariffs, I call out. I made a community post about this. I call out larger channels when they screw up or do things or publish data that's wrong. But I also want to be clear, GN did a phenomenal video on tariffs. I watched the whole thing. It was excellent. It explained the impact of tariffs that companies like Height and NZXT and others are having. I think that was extremely educational, very well timed, and I think it gives people a perspective that you might not get. It was not drama. It was not hype. I mean, that's the GN I personally love. So if you haven't watched that video, I know it's not on my channel, but go watch the video. It's very, very good. And it does show the massive impact that tariffs will have, if fully implemented, on our community. And one of the examples was a Y40 case from Height was retailing for $130. They were making $5 profit in the US. And if they implemented all the tariffs, they would have to increase the price to $300 roughly to get the same $5 profit. And so they've actually decided not to bring in more cases into the US. Until this is resolved. So they also talked about uncertainty and other things. And I don't want to get into the politics of it, but the impact of the tariffs is real, right? And so I found that video very, very good. Kudos to Steve and the team. I mean, I wish you would do more of those and kind of less on the drama side, but that was exceptionally good. So hats off to him and the team. I want to be very fair when they do something wrong, I want to call it out. When they do something right, I also want to call it out. So hats off to GN. Awesome job. I'm sure he won't see this, but at least, you know, this community that we're building together, I want to be very fair as possible to other content creators. When they do amazing things, I want to call it out. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. Let's see what else. So I have a question from Agram about, have I tried an eGPU, and that you're going to try it for your laptop. So I have a Razer laptop, an older Razer laptop, and I bought their eGPU enclosure, and I tried it out. The problem was the speed is heavily limited by the connection, the cable. So I think this was through USB-C. It was a higher bandwidth cable, but it ends up being equivalent to like an older standard of PCIe, like 2 or 3 or something. So just be aware of that. I don't know. I haven't tried them recently. I don't know if things have improved. I think there's a higher bandwidth connection that I at least saw Asus had on their laptops. So just keep that in mind. It's not perfect, but it is a very good way, in my opinion. May not be a great cost related way, but it's a very good way to buy a laptop and be able to upgrade your GPU compute capabilities without, you know, obviously it's tough to upgrade a laptop. So yeah, try it out. Let us know what you think. That would be an interesting video to make. I'd have to get the right laptop eGPU combo, and of course desktop GPUs are significantly faster and have higher power margins, other things than their mobile counterparts. So a 5080 mobile is nowhere near as good a performance as a 5080 desktop, right? Card. Just keep that in mind. But yeah, no, I've tried it. Let me know how you do. I think that's pretty interesting. All right, so let me move on. Something that I learned. How are we doing on time? All right, I'll wrap things up soon. Something that I came across that I wanted to share with this community. This is a very confusing thing that I've seen, and I'm going to show this in the video next week, but I wanted to share it here. When you compare memory, video memory, VRAM, between two different cards, you should always compare the effective memory clock speed, not the memory clock speed. So one of those is a data rate, right? And it should be measured it's typically measured in gigabits per second. So if you go to Tech Power Up, you'll see, and you look at a card, you'll see two numbers. You'll see the actual clock speed in megahertz and the data transfer rate in gigabits per second. So I'll get to why this is confusing in a moment, but this is the correct equation. Effective memory clock speed is equal to the memory clock speed times the data transfers per cycle of that RAM. So if you have GDDR6, which is on the 9070 XT, the memory transfers at 8 data bits per clock cycle, whereas on GDDR7, the memory transfers at 16 data bits per clock cycle. So if you were to go in and compare these two cards, you would see that a 5070 Ti has a memory clock frequency of 1750 megahertz, whereas a 9070 XT has a memory clock frequency much higher of 2518 megahertz. And you might think that the 9070 XT has faster memory, when in actual fact, if you multiply these out, so 2518 times 8 gives you 20.1 gigabits per second effective memory clock, right? Versus 1750 times 16 gives you 28 gigabits per second effective memory clock. So the 5070 Ti actually has higher memory bandwidth or transfer rate than the 9070 XT. I wanted to show you this because I was confused by this. And the reason I was confused by this, which I think is interesting, is that if you're using MSI Afterburner, right? So this is just the skin that I use for MSI Afterburner. When you input the memory, remember the video next week is on overclocking NVIDIA cards. So I was very much confused when I was inputting here. The memory in megahertz here is an increase in the memory clock, not the effective memory clock speed, okay? So it's correct to say that's in megahertz, right? So you should be, when you input this, let's see if I go back, you should be inputting numbers relative to this 1750. So you would input something like 150 megahertz, a plus 150 megahertz, plus 250 megahertz, plus 350 megahertz. That's the magnitude that you should be inputting in MSI Afterburner, okay? So now go back to MSI Afterburner. That's what you should input here, right? Now, and here's the fascinating thing. If you use GPU Tweak 3, they show effective memory clock speed. So there's a couple of things that are wrong here. This says memory clock. It's not. It's the effective memory clock. This is 28 gigabits per second. It is incorrect to call this a megahertz. It should be 28,002 mega transfers per second, right? It's a data transfer rate. The reason this is important is if the base clock speed of your GPU for the 5070 Ti is 1750, here you're going to want to put in much larger increases in effective memory clock because it's multiplied by 16. So if you put in 100 in the MSI Afterburner tool, you're going to, that's equivalent to 1600 in GPU Tweak 3. Isn't that confusing? By the way, I sent a note to ASUS about updating this and changing it to be correct, and they said they're going to input it into their next version. But man, is that stupid and confusing. So yeah, just back to this. So yeah, it can be a problem. So the other problem I see is that if you go online and you say my overclock is XYZ and you use GPU Tweak 3 and you tell someone you inputted 3,000 mega transfers per second, or if you use the wrong thing, megahertz, you did an overclock of 3,000 megahertz on the memory, they then take that and put that in MSI Afterburner, they will crash their system. And then you'll see people arguing about, hey, well, that's a terrible memory overclock. I was able to get so much more. So you've got to be careful, right? Really careful here, right? So that's something just to be aware of. And I'll go through it in detail during the overclock video. But I wanted to give you a heads up because I think this one is something that a lot of people get confused. It's not intuitive because the tools show the wrong thing. Like here, MSI could say memory clock speed instead of just mem. But at least it's correct what they're showing. ASUS really needs to get this correct, right? So, yeah, I mean, this was very, very weird. It's something I wanted to share. And then the last thing before I wrap it up, I did want to share Intel, right? So Intel has come out that, man, thank you. I really appreciate that. It really does help the channel. Really, really appreciate that. Any kind of contribution, you know, you're not forced to do that, and I really do appreciate when you do that, it means a lot. So thank you. So let me just quickly talk about Intel. Intel, obviously, you're fully aware that Intel has had issues with their 200 Core Ultra 200 series processors. And they've been upgrading them over time with firmware updates. And I did a video of the 285K versus 9800 X3D and spent some time optimizing it and got really, really good results with the 285K. Now, it's expensive. Memory I got was expensive. The motherboard I used was expensive. I agree. But I got very good performance. By the way, I will be doing, not the next video, the video after will be the 285K versus 9950 X3D. I've been dying to do this video for months, and I'm getting really sick of testing GPUs, just so you know. You go through that cycle. I got sick of testing CPUs, and then all the GPUs came out. I really wish they would stagger releases, but whatever. I'm going to do that, so it's coming. And I will test this, by the way. Tom's Hardware, a good trusted website, talked about the 200S boost feature. What's fascinating is all the boost feature does is this. This is all it does. It changes the D2D from 2.1 up to 3.2. It changes the NGU fabric from 2.1 up to 3.2. and it just increases support for a higher speed RAM. Kind of irrelevant because you can get higher speed RAM working anyway. This aligns with what I discovered. What I discovered when I was overclocking the 285K, I think I'll show you my results in a moment. But I found a lot of significant headroom in the D2D and NGU fabric, and it impacted performance. So this is absolutely reasonable. I'm glad Intel went back and did this. That being said, if you followed my overclocking guide, you have an Intel Core Ultra system, follow my overclocking guide. What I found was 34 on NGU and 36 on the D2D, and what they've now got is up to 3.2. So if you follow the overclocking guide, you're already extracting more performance than what this is anyway. But this is a cool feature, and I wish more companies would do this for people that just want to plug it in, press a button, and not have to worry about things. That being said, pressing an extra few buttons and then testing stability, I don't think is a waste of time. I think everyone should be able to do that anyway. And I try to do things that aren't complicated, that do not require a degree in mathematics to figure out. I think that's important. But anyway, so I wanted to cover that. And then I was using DDR5 9000, expensive memory. That's how to extract the most out of Intel Core Ultra series. So anyway, so I did want to cover that briefly and just let you know that the video is coming. But this was a good move by Intel, in my opinion. So the question now is, what channels are going to go back and retest? So I'm going to show max overclock versus max overclock, and stock versus stock, max overclock versus max overclock, and I'll show this boost feature as well. So very cool. And that's basically it. So remember, you saw the very impressive results for this. So if you're a member of the channel and you missed out on the 9070 XT giveaway, and again, congratulations to Ben for winning that. But if you missed out, then don't fret. I'll do this announcement in the video for next Friday. Haven't figured out when I'm going to draw this yet, but it's to celebrate hitting 15K subscribers, and I've got more coming, so just be aware of that. I've still working through the details with Asus on doing the build and doing a giveaway with them, so that's coming. That one will be open to everyone. That won't be just to the member community. And I've got a few more things. I do get questions occasionally of whether I'm going to give away a 5080 or a 5090. The answer at the moment is no, simply because I have one 5080. I do have two 5090s, but I'm using those for testing. So I can't give away things that I need for testing. That being said, as inventory improves, hopefully, in Q2, Q3, if I can get some samples, then I should be able to do giveaways there as well. So so stay tuned for that. Let's see. Any other last minute questions before we wrap up? I'm glad that you liked that explanation. It's funny. When I'm doing a video and I'm going through things, if I discover something that I did not realize, for example, I did not know that the two tools were inputting different numbers. I was aware of the fact that one was a lot larger than the other, but I really didn't understand the relationship. And by the way, I didn't think it was very well explained. When I dug into this online, you've always got the AI input from Google, which was kind of okay, but I really didn't think it was well explained. There was a comment in a Reddit post somewhere that did a good job explaining some of it. But I always look at very complicated explanations and think to myself, there's got to be an easier way. So if I'm having trouble understanding, I've got to really understand the technology a little better, and then so that I can present it to this community in a much more easy to understand way. So that's what I try and do. You don't get points for... I always found that if someone can't explain something in a simple way, they don't really understand it themselves. That's what I always learned in engineering. And sometimes that wasn't true. Sometimes it actually was extremely complicated and I was just the idiot in the room. But most of the time they really weren't didn't understand the topic as well as they said they did. And you can usually figure that out by asking a few simple questions, right? Let's see. Michael said, I mortgaged my house to buy a 5090. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing that, but yeah, I'm hoping that's a joke. Yeah, it's crazy. The fact that I have to hope that's a joke is a bad sign, right? Let's see. Overclocking videos. Yep. Yeah, and there's a statement here. Don't feel like you need to do giveaway. I don't feel like I need to. That being said, like I did have this GPU posted to sell, and I could go on and sell it on eBay and make some money that way. But at the same time, I do want to help this community, right? The reason I'm doing it as a member giveaway is I want to help the people that are supporting me. I want to give back, not just in like information, but I want to give something back. And if I've got a GPU sitting here, PC tech, I get joy out of watching others enjoy something that I love, right? So the more people I can help game on a higher end GPU or CPU or make smart choices, that's a high for me. Like that's just very cool, right? And I'm working on ways to, generate revenue through this channel and turn it into more of a business. Like you talked about the educational program, and consults and other things, partnerships. A lot of companies are reaching out to me about inserting, ads at the start of the videos, and I'm being very careful about that. I really don't, there's companies I don't want to associate my name with. There's also companies that, offer you peanuts to insert something into your video, and I'm just not down for that. My time's valuable. So, if you're going to disrespect me by offering me $5 to do a 60-second slot in a video that goes to 50,000 people, I'm going to ignore you or whatever, right? So, I'm trying to be very careful about that. I probably will do that as we move forward, but I need to make sure that I'm aligned with the ethics of the company and that I'm aligned with their integrity and that type of thing. So, I'm working on ways to build revenue so that I can buy the components versus having them sent to me. And when you get them sent to you, you do feel some kind of obligation to say things that you might not necessarily said or highlighted. There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're clear that the component was sent to you versus you purchase. When you purchase, I am completely free to say whatever I want about any of the cards, right? Or CPUs or whatever. That's something that I've discussed with, for example, Asus, that, and to their credit, they've never said to me, hey, if we send you something, you have to say X, Y, and Z. What they do say is, if we send you this, we would appreciate it if you could look through this document that goes through. And for a GPU, it might be, hey, this is what thermal interface material we're using. We've found that it increases temperatures by 2 degrees. Here's the cooling solution. This is why we did X, Y, Z. That's okay. I'm happy to say that, but I always like to test and verify, right? And so, yeah, they're the kind of people that I want to work with moving forward. All right. Let's see. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I appreciate that, Cody. Thanks for joining. I want to keep the membership kind of costs as low as possible as well. So yeah, it's a couple of dollars, but I really appreciate when people do that. So yep, you'll be. I haven't got a post up there yet, by the way, for the 5070 Ti giveaway. I'm gonna wait to put that up there when I do the video. So just bear that in mind. And then anyone that was entered in the 9070 XT, I'll keep them entered in this, except Ben, of course, who I'm going to reach out to after this. And if you want to be excluded, if you truly hate Nvidia and don't want to be given a free Nvidia card, hey, you do you. I'm good for that. Just let me know. Yeah, I think that's it for the day. Let's see. I have one last question. Did I get an answer from Roman yet? Not yet. I believe that Computex is around now, so it's not a good time to reach out to people. I was considering going, but I have family commitments, and we just went away, so I wanted to get back into the swing of things. So that's not to be unexpected. So my guess is that he's got a couple of events on at the moment. I will reach back out to him. I do think of all the content creators out there, the person I'm most looking forward to working with is Roman. I love his background. He's technical. And what's interesting, I also happen to have a very large German following, which if I look at my demographics, which is interesting. I do speak a little bit of German, but I learned that in school, so it's very, very rusty and bad. So yeah, I think that would be very cool. Yeah, someone said I should accept completely unrelated ad opportunities. So, like DoorDash, YouTube inserts their own ads. I don't have any control over that. So you may see somewhat unrelated ads on the channel. Unless you're if you buy Premiere through YouTube, you won't see the ads. So yeah, I mean, I do the things I can control, I want to control, and I do want them to be somewhat related, and I want them to be valuable, and I want it to be something that I use. For example, like chair companies have reached out to me, and a lot of Windows key companies, I don't even know if they're legit, but whatever, have reached out. There's a lot of things, and like security companies and other things. If I haven't used the software or the product, I feel uncomfortable promoting it. I think that's something that I'm going to try and stay up with. But if it's something I've used and I like, I have no problems promoting it, right? Hey, this is a great fan. I like it. This is a great AIO, whatever that may be. So I'm happy to do that. Okay. And last question is from Francisco about how do you enter the new competition? I haven't put a post up there. I will do a member post. I will do the member post next week or tomorrow if I get time. And then the official announcement will be in the video for next week at the end of the video. But I'll do a member post. It'll be very similar to the one that I did for the 9070 XT. So hang in there. I will give plenty of time to enter. Don't worry about that. I'm not going to do the drawing in a week. It'll probably be, where are we? We're in April. It'll be probably in May sometime that I'll do that. So don't worry. There's time. So anyway. That's interesting. Francisco just said he's a helicopter mechanic. So that's very cool. Very cool. I worked a lot of hours with helicopter mechanics on maintenance optimization and using the health and usage monitoring system on helicopters to provide the data to give insight into what was broken, need to be worked. But very interesting stuff. But for another time, I always run over, and I apologize about that. We're an hour and 20 minutes in, which isn't too bad for me because I just love this stuff and I can talk about it forever, and someone's at my door. So with that said, I really do appreciate you. I appreciate this community. I think it's awesome that we're growing this community together. I truly appreciate that you're able to spend some of your time with me today to go through everything. And as always, if you've got questions, comments, shoot them to me. Always up for talking about, PC tech and what we can do together. Very, very cool. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining, and congratulations to Ben, the winner of the 9070 XT, and good luck on the new competition for everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.